Good morning. Glad you're here. A beautiful day. Got an extra hour of sleep. It'll make us all feel better. So no matter who you are, no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. And we begin in silence, if it helps you to close your eyes to do that. And I offer these words that I adopted from a medieval prayer book. So may grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in our mouths and in our speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding, and may grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may, because of what we do here, we grow in patience, tolerance, compassion, patience, justice, and peace. And may what we do here contribute to the well-being of all people everywhere. Amen.
Amen.
So we have been going through what the scholars refer to as the database of the teachings of Jesus. And I'm using primarily, but not exclusively, a map that is provided by the linguistic scholar Stephen
Mitchell.
Mm-hmm. I went blank on his name, called The Gospel According to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that's not exclusively what we're using, but that's primary. And what we are doing is going through, I didn't put that up, a series of talks that are based on the Beatitudes. Now, the Beatitudes are called that because they begin with the word blessed, and they might be considered a summary of what we call the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount. Now, there are 9 of these teachings in the Beatitudes, and they are broken into 3 parts. One has to do with humility, which is not groveling, but an openness to learning. One has to do with justice, and the one that we're dealing with today has to do with peace. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Holly Hudley for being willing to sit with me during these 3 teachings.
It's such a chore.
Because, how many of you have seen Pearl Before Swine today? Oh, you have to go home and read that in the comics because it is the best pun. Have you seen it? It is the best pun on Carl Jung that I have ever seen. And so I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to see it for yourself.
Okay.
But Jung is very big on the bringing of the anima or feminine energy into talking about various spiritual teachings. And since the Beatitudes, well, the Sermon on the Mount is a consolidation, I think, of all the teachings of Jesus. Let's refer to them as Jesus' greatest hits.
Top 10.
And then if you wanted to summarize the Sermon on the Mount and get it even smaller, it would be in these 9 sayings that we have been dealing with. Mm-hmm. And just to refresh your memory, I will read to you from the Beatitudes a translation that you may not be familiar with. Blessed are the rich. The reign of the world is theirs. Blessed are those who cause others to mourn, those who kill, who support killing, who wage war, who pay taxes for killing, who allow nuclear weapons and war preparations to exist, who legalize murder of people on death row. Blessed are those who do not mourn or grieve. Blessed are the violent. Blessed are the proud, the arrogant, the powerful, those who dominate others, those who oppress the poor, those who support systems of domination. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for injustice, for the reign of this world is theirs. Blessed are those who show no mercy. Blessed are the war makers. Blessed are those who are not persecuted for justice, who are comfortable, safe, and secure, who do not get involved in the struggle for social justice, who remain silent, turn a deaf ear to the cries of the poor, and fund and participate in systemic injustice. The reign of this world is theirs. Just thought that we put it out there, not as Jesus said it, but as we live it.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the actual verses that we're dealing with today.
Mm-hmm.
You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are, your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they're uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens, even give a cheer even. For though they don't like it, I do, and all heaven applauds. And you know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. I think this is your favorite part.
Yes, it is.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth.
We also both really love salt.
Huh?
We share that.
Yeah.
Yes. That's my most common
I think
snack.
that's the thing I say when we sit down to eat every meal that I cook. I'm not sure I put enough salt in it.
Yes, I love salt. So as Bill said, this set of Beatitudes focuses on peace. And I want to be clear about how we're trying to define peace. It is not simply the absence of violence, but it's the active pursuit of justice through acts of repair and reconciliation. Peace is a noun, it's a thing to attain, whereas peacemaking is an action verb. And I think we're being called to be action verbs. I hope each week since beginning this study, it's become clear to you that the Beatitudes are not passive spiritual states, but radical calls to active resistance to abuses of power, like the sort of anti-Beatitudes that Bill read, and solidarity with the oppressed. They're a corrective to our individualistic faith that has been, in my opinion, catastrophic to a movement that began in community. Modern mystic and author Dorothy Soleil, you've heard both of us refer to her, she reframes Christianity as fundamentally a political and communal project, interpreting the Beatitudes as a push toward a collective spirituality that's meant to bring about justice on earth. She writes, God has no other hands than ours. She emphasizes a faith that comes to life via human action. So the Beatitudes lay that path out for us, how to live with more humility, justice, and peace. The Hebrew word used for peace in the Beatitudes is shalom. It implies actually a deeper meaning of wholeness, completeness, and well-being, again, that goes far beyond just the absence of conflict. To create shalom for others and with others is to delight in each other, to delight in our well-being, to delight in our differences and our similarities. It's to love one another so fully as a direct antidote to things like what our political system is doing right now. Our president called not just on the deportation of the strange other, but to kill them. Think about what's happening in the Caribbean right now. Peace does not mean to remain passive to such missives, but to actively and nonviolently resist them. As a result of this week's teaching, I've been thinking a lot about this relationship between anger and activism, and actually anger and peace, which are not so far apart. This came as a result of Bill and I talking about various signs at the No Kings rally. Some were really funny, some were very angry. And while I totally understand the anger, there's a difference between what I'm going to later define as holy anger and reactive anger. Let me illustrate with a rather embarrassing story about the latter. When Josh and I were expecting our first kiddo, we were having dinner with friends one night, and we were the first among that group of friends to have kids. Somehow this conversation turned to discipline, what we would do about discipline, how we would handle it, what we thought about it. Most of us at the table grew up 70s and 80s, were raised with some form of spanking. So that was sort of normalized when I was growing up. Spanking your kids was not yet so taboo. And my generation of parents, however, tends to be a pretty anxious generation. Like, we're kind of the yes generation of parents. We've read every freaking parenting book there is. And I know parents who actually strive to not say no to their kids. So Josh was making a joke about living in a neighborhood where, like, the neighbor whooped you if your mom wasn't home, and how she'd tell the mom later, you know what Josh did? And I glared at him and I slugged him on the shoulder. And I said, we will not hit our children. Everybody got up from the table and just had no idea what to say. They were like, it's time to clean. Anyways, not my finest moment, but it's an example of reactive anger, where fear or anxiety controlled an action, controlled an outcome. It's not so helpful when we're talking about peacemaking or raising children or managing your relationship. But the question I have to wrestle with today that I think would have helped me in that moment is, what do we do with our anger? How do we transform it so that it neither consumes us nor harms another, but actually provides a spark that ignites change?
So I want to go back to what you said in quoting Dorothy Soleil. Mm-hmm. When Marcus Borg was here, I asked him, I think it was here, it may have been in New York, but I asked him, who should I be reading? What theologian should I be reading right now? And he said Dorothy Soleil. Mm. And I think you and I read most of her stuff by now.
A fair amount.
She's not an easy reader. However, she's a female.
And she's consistent.
And she's
all of her books are reminiscent of the same.
And so
theme.
what I'm finding in this, we're off script.
Yes, totally. I paused. But
I never go off script. Right. What I'm finding is that the people that I'm currently reading are like people like Joan Chittister and Dorothy Soleil and others who are bringing this anima energy into conversation. And what Richard Rohr said about Jesus is that Jesus had a male body and a feminine spirit. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk to you now about somebody who's also got that same feminine spirit. Mm-hmm. Because I have been angry a lot lately. Yeah. I don't know about you. So I want to tell you a story about anger. I'm 88. And I am old enough to have lived through some really turbulent times in this country. And further, I am blessed or cursed, depending on how you see it, with a memory that can recall things from when I was just barely 3 years old. I remember the Sunday afternoon when news came on the radio that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. I can remember our having a victory garden because we couldn't buy stuff in the grocery store. I remember things being rationed, like sugar and gasoline. Couldn't buy tires for your car. There was no such thing as butter to be had. We made a thing called oleo, margarine. Ugh.
And that then became normal for a long time.
Well, you got it in a white package in a little yellow capsule, and you burst the capsule and squished it all through the lard. I love doing that. I remember the day that World War II was declared to be over, and we all drove into the small town where we live with honking the horns on our car. When I was in junior high, there was the Korean conflict. When I started my teaching career, that was the year John Kennedy was assassinated. And everybody at that time could answer the question, where were you when JFK was killed? 5 years after that, after I got fired from that position and I was following another vocational path, I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated. And then when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. And now all during this time, in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was the background noise on the scene that caused a major shift in our culture. We called it the 60s. And with it came the Beatles. And there was the conflict between the hard hats and the long hairs. There was the national angst about what was going on in Vietnam. And because the church, as it has in so many social situations, has failed to be either prophetic or relevant, so many young people at that time turned to the religions of the East. And there were people who made those religions palatable. One was Jack Kornfield, with whom I was lucky enough to study. Another was Alan Watts, who was a brilliant mind in Eastern religions. And then there was this little Buddhist monk who, because he would not take sides of the conflict on his own country, was expelled from Vietnam, and he found a home, first of all, in the United States. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh. And his audience was then around the world for peace. He became the most prominent and popular teacher on the subject of nonviolence. And the lines that he was most well known for out of that period were, "There is no way to peace. Peace is the way to be." I found comfort in the teachings of this guy. I listened to him on cassette tapes.
Which you still try to hand me cassette tapes every now and then.
Well, this would be good for you.
I have no way to play them anymore.
So I went to hear him at a conference. It's a conference called, I think, The Practice of Mindfulness and Psychotherapy. And during one of the sessions, there occurred an exchange between Thich Nhat Hanh and one of the participants that is so vividly etched in my memory. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh had not been in the country very long. His English was poor. His accent was very thick. He's soft-spoken to begin with. And so it's difficult to hear him. But during one of the Q&A periods, this woman, I'm censoring a lot of judgment, this woman had a question for him, and the question was, how do you suggest that we deal with our patients who have anger issues? And Thich Nhat Hanh had a very difficult time understanding that. Anger is a difficult emotion for Buddhists. You'll hear Holly talk later about the book he wrote. He had not written his massive tome on anger at this point. So as a process of trying to understand the question, he asked this woman, well, what do you do now to try to help your patients deal with anger? And she said, we get them to express it. And he said, really? How you do that? And she said, well, we give them a pillow, put it on the floor, we give them a bataka, which is a big bat, and we have them hit the pillow over and over and over and over until they get the anger out. What do you think about that? Thich Nhat Hanh got right down in her face and took his finger and said, I think you better talk to Pillow.
Did you want to share how you made those images?
No.
Okay.
So I need some pillow talk. We're going to have some in a minute. Now I want to tell you what pillow talk is. Pillow talk symbolizes rest and intimacy. It's a time of emotional connection where people can express their feelings honestly. And they express thoughts that might not otherwise be expressed anywhere else. And it allows partners to express their vulnerabilities, their insecurities, their reflections, maybe their cursing.
Never.
And it strengthens their bond. And I hope that these times in here reflect that kind of desire and connection. So since we last met here, one of the reasons I've been angry is that the east wing of the White House has been destroyed. Now, I'm old. For some younger friends of mine in the ministry that I have talked to, this is no big deal. It's a big deal to me. It feels like a personal affront. No warnings given, no permission asked, just done. And I feel personally assaulted. And then to add, by the way, somebody told me that nobody makes a $3 million remodel of their house.
300 million.
300 million if they plan to move out. Just this week, someone sent me a photograph of Donald Trump autographing a Bible. You can get an autographed Bible autographed by Trump for $1,000. He has made $1.3 million doing this. I have been endorsing the teachings of Jesus for decades.
You haven't made that much money yet? It's the difference between signing Bibles and not.
2 weeks ago, when Dr. McDonald was here, and I said he's here to announce my raise, and he said stand up, and that's the raise I got.
Yeah.
So Pillow and I need to have a serious talk. Now, for those of you who ever wonder what practical application these kind of teachings have, or what you can do with them, we're going to show you a video. And Ann Taylor, who's sitting right here, is the one who sent me this video. We hope it works. It's a little bit less than 4 minutes. I hope there's subcaptions, but if there's not, just pay attention.
The suspense is...
You have an opportunity to practice patience. It's going to work. Just hang on.
That's right. Take out your phones for a minute. Mm-hmm.
Don't judge a book by its cover. And I think the greatest example ever of those two things combined comes from Ireland 41 years ago. We had 10 white ladies who worked in a grocery store, and they said, we refuse to sell grapefruits imported from South Africa anymore in this grocery store, and by doing that, we're going to help end apartheid. Who's with us? And the whole of Ireland went, we don't really like grapefruits, to be honest. Like, we love the bananas and apples, you know, and the strawberries in summer from Wexford primarily, but I think the grapefruits, we could probably live without them. And more of a luxury product. And I don't know if you've looked outside, but we don't have any black people either, so best of luck with that strategy. And they did. To be honest, not a whole lot of people support them. You remember 1 or 2 politicians, but for the most part, the police were against them, the trade unions were against them, gun stores, the grocery store they worked in was against them, and just a lot of the country. And they were delighted one day when this black fella called Nimrod showed up, and they were like, "Oh, must be working. I've never seen a black guy before, and there's one out there right now, so we're having an impact." These ladies had never met a black person before, despite protesting on behalf of their rights. And this guy, Nimrod, said to them, "Ladies, what you're doing is so potentially impactful. I can't even really properly vocalize it, so I'm just going to stand with you every single day in solidarity until people pay attention." And he stood with them every single day for 6 months, walking 3 miles each way to get there with the ladies. And no one paid much attention at all, to be honest, until it made its way to a rather interesting man, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Yeah. On his way to pick up his Nobel Peace Prize, was like, "I got to meet the grapefruit ladies." And he did. He flew them over to meet with him in London. And because of that, a rather interesting guy in America got wind of it. And he said, "I've never heard of a bunch of white people protesting something that affects them so little. This is fantastic. I have to march with these grapefruit ladies." That was Reverend Jesse Jackson, and he did march with the grapefruit ladies. On the way home, they stopped off at the United Nations and became the first ever recipients of a standing ovation as external speakers in the history of the United Nations, just for telling them what they were doing. That was enough to get the attention of a guy on his long walk to freedom on Robben Island, South Africa. And he said, once in a while, you hear other people fighting on behalf of you, and it just really inspires you to keep going. I have to meet with these grapefruit ladies. That was Nelson Mandela. And in 1990, he flew to Ireland to meet with the grapefruit ladies. And by that stage, the Irish government had given in, the trade unions gave in, the grocery store, done stores gave in, and Ireland became the first country in the Western world to ban the import and sale of all goods from South Africa, thereby helping end apartheid with a fruit that we don't feckin' like. For me, it's a lovely bit of history that all too often gets forgotten. But Nelson Mandela never forgot. When he passed away, he made sure that the ladies were invited guests of honor at his funeral should they wish to attend. And they did attend in a free South Africa that they helped create. And it was only around that time Nimrod, the one black guy who showed up to the protest in Dublin, got round to telling them who he actually was. He'd been Nelson Mandela's cellmate on Robben Island. Oh yeah, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew Irish people liked speaking up for other oppressed groups. He knew we loved the hip-hop, thought we were a little bit black. And I tell you that story because the leader of those 10 white ladies was called Karen, so you never know.
Sorry, it didn't play. It didn't play, right?
No, but the vocals are the most important. Okay. Yeah. It's the fractal effect of small things create large patterns. And I think that the purpose of that is to inspire us that our small things can create large patterns, or it can step into a larger pattern that's already at play. So your pillow and my husband's shoulder notwithstanding, I am actually of the camp who believes that our anger does need a place to land. Maybe not through beating the pillow, but some kind of channel through which we can feel it, we can express it, and we can transform it so that it doesn't end up coming out sideways. There's a saying, though, that we can't bring a pillow to a knife fight. So what do we do then? In psychology, anger is often considered to be a secondary emotion that surfaces in response to more vulnerable ones like fear, hurt, or grief. It protects us in a way from having to experience some pretty wild edges of emotions that are hard to feel. I have this visual concept that anger kind of lives up in here. It's the first thing to come out. And then beneath that is fear and anxiety, often the second things to come out. And then at our base are just the whole host of other emotions. And when we can get to those, when we can get to the root of the anger, we might actually be able to do something productive with it. That said, anger feels delicious sometimes. There's something I think really powerful about feeling angry, and we get this adrenaline rush. We have a sort of sense of power or empowerment. How many of us were taught to just be nice? And so it's a stuffing down of the things that maybe should make us angry at times. It's a powerful motivator, a kind of indicator of that something ain't right that Hafiz wrote about. It can help fuel energy needed to address or change a stressful situation. Those grapefruit ladies first had to feel angry about apartheid in order to recognize that they could do something. So anger is not without merit, in my opinion. Thich Nhat Hanh's book on anger, called Wisdom for Cooling the Flames, he also expresses that it's not an enemy to suppress, but a messenger to transform into compassion and nonviolence. In some way, I think we need to enter into a kind of a deep apprenticeship with our anger to deepen our relationship with peace. Like the other components of the Beatitudes, there's an inner and an outer component to becoming peacemakers. First, Thich Nhat Hanh says, we need to recognize and accept our anger. We might do this by bringing mindful attention to it, or a breath, or movement. When I'm feeling really overwhelmed with agitation or anger, I go on a walk, and sometimes I think I have my best thoughts in those moments. Someone else could tell you whether that's true or not. Second, we offer it tenderness and awareness. We say to it, I see you. I hear you. We do this by observing it without judgment, but with curiosity and compassion. We might also then start to get curious about the root causes of it and get honest about the stories we tell ourselves about why we're holding on to the anger. Most of us can find a justification for holding on. A question we might ask ourselves is, what unmet needs or fears are contributing to this anger? 20 years ago, I was certified in nonviolent communication, and one of the primary concepts of NVC is that violence is a result of unmet needs. Generally, our very basic needs. Think back to that Maslow's hierarchy I showed you in the Blackfoot pyramid that it was actually based on. And in the Blackfoot philosophy, everyone's basic needs are met. When our basic needs are met, we're much less likely to erupt into conflict and anger. Third, creating awareness of our own anger may lead us to ask, what suffering might the other person on the other end of my anger be experiencing? If we can get curious about the other, we're more able to listen, to focus on understanding rather than criticizing or analyzing. In that space between anger and not quite peace, we might find common ground. And finally, Thich Nhat Hanh teaches that what we consume, from slaughtered or chemically altered foods, to violent movies, to violent video games, actually starts to impact our psyches. And that may actually affect our quickness to anger. So what we put in our bodies is eventually going to come out. We're surrounded by toxicity in so many places, in our media, in our movies, in our games, in our entertainment. So give yourself permission to take a break from it. Nonviolence is truly a stance of interconnectedness. It's like the grapefruit ladies. It doesn't end with interconnectedness, it starts there. So care for others in this way becomes an extension of self-care and vice versa.
So blessed are the peacemakers. I think I'm safe in saying that only mentally disturbed people, and there seem to be a lot of them out there, thrive on chaos. I think most people want to live in peace. When I ask AI how many armed conflicts are going on in the world today, the answer was 122. That's 122. One of the ways that the United States has been very blessed in recent years is that outside of 9/11, there's been no foreign incursion to have a war in this country. Many countries don't know what that's like. Mm-hmm. The other amazing statistic I got from AI is that as of September of this year, the chance that an American has been present for a mass shooting is 1 in 15. The statistic for somebody being injured in a mass shooting in America is 1 in 45. Now, we're not teaching today about not killing other people. I think everybody in here would agree that's not a good thing to do. But at the same time, there's clearly something out of kilter about what has become acceptable behavior in our country. 4 years ago this month, Diana Butler Bass, another female, stood here and she and I dialogued. She had been here to promote a book and speak. She spoke in the sanctuary, had a sellout crowd for what she did. She is a church historian. Some of you may subscribe to her Substack. I recommend it. It comes out a couple times a week. She'd been on a trip to Europe recently, speaking and resting. As a matter of fact, I think one of the places she went was to Ireland. And during that time, she disconnected mostly. But she did hear what other people in other countries are saying about their observation about what's going on in the United States. It's not pretty. So when she got back, she said that she was greeted with 2 photographs that she put on her website, on her Substack. She made comments about them very much. She just posted them. The first photograph was this one. This is a Presbyterian minister wearing a clerical collar with his hands up, praying for calmness and carefulness in the face of ICE agents who are capturing and restraining people they suspected of being in violation of immigration laws. By the way, the statistics of those who have been so treated, who are legal residents and citizens, is appalling. ICE agents shot this minister in the face with pepper bullets multiple times. And the person who reported on this said one of the agents laughed at doing it, and the other agent was heard to have said, "I don't even know why I'm here." This kind of thing is going to increase, not decrease, in our society. That's my fear. The other photograph that she posted was this. This is a photograph of a minister who conducted an entire worship service he led for his congregation with an AK-47 strapped to his chest. The man with him, also holding an automatic weapon, is wearing a t-shirt that says, "Christ-centered fitness." Now, I personally am all for the No Kings protest. Jesus did not bow to Caesar. He did not bless the empire. He stood with the poor, the pushed aside, the silenced. He flipped tables when the religion got cozy with religion. And that's a Jesus most of us have never met in church. Because too often the church traded that Jesus for one that keeps quiet, just be patient. Things are going to change. Don't make a ruckus. That's what I was told. So I'll make a personal testimony. I have sought most of my personal and professional life to know and understand the man and teachings of Jesus. And the more I read, and I read the mystics, and And English is no language to try to communicate this. Sanskrit or Hebrew or Aramaic is a better language. English is rotten at doing this. The word mysticism cannot even be said in English. The word mystic is It comes from a Sanskrit word that goes. And from Meister Eckhart, I got this phrase, the wayless way, which we're the theme of what we're teaching. My experience is that I thought I could get to the wayless way. My experience is the wayless way touches me. The wayless way comes to me. This is what humility in spiritual practice is about. I'm not in charge. I don't do this. And that's what I want to try to teach in here. I want to share my rediscovery of a faith that tells the truth in the context in which we live. I want to say that again. I want to share my rediscovery of a faith that tells the truth in the context in which we live. It's a faith that speaks truth to empire, it resists oppression, and it embodies a love that dares to act. So, after the No Kings rallies, our president himself posted on his own social media a meme showing him piloting a plane that dumped excrement onto protesting people below. That is vile. It is an embarrassment that the president of our country did that. I cannot imagine the response that same behavior would have garnered had it been done by Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George Bush, or Ronald Reagan. Either side, right or left, you know that's wrong. And I know that behavior does not represent all those who are on the right or all those who voted for Trump. I get that. 4 different people sent me a link to an article that was in the New York Times that said, among other things, that some protesters are susceptible to lowering themselves to the same level as our president. We cannot do that. Remember the old folk saying, don't wrestle with a pig? The pig enjoys it, and you only get dirty. So, some people have said, well, that poster by Trump was just a joke. It ain't funny. And I know that there are people who say and do extremely hurtful things, harmful things, and afterwards say, it was only a joke. Can't you take a joke? I was only joking. Horse feathers. I'd say another word, but I can't say that.
Thinking.
That was no joke. That was clearly the indication of an unbalanced mind.
Yeah. I think this is what we're trying to wrestle out loud with here, is what's the appropriate expression of anger and the appropriate response to it. Anger is an appropriate response to the meme dumping poop all over protesters. It's an appropriate response to ICE agents shooting priests in the face and slamming people, children, onto the ground. It's an appropriate response to the president posting another meme of Hakeem Jeffries with a sombrero and a thick mustache because he is more tolerant and empathetic towards immigrants. His compassion, i.e. Hakeem Jeffries' compassion, is not the problem here. The racist meme is. Anger is an appropriate response to someone calling my child or my husband the N-word and then walking it back with, I was just joking. It happens all the time. One night, as my husband does often, he took a walk, and he also, as he also does often, he was wearing earbuds and probably listening. He loves romance novels. I love this about him.
Is that true? He does that?
Yeah, I am dead serious. The only reason I read romance novels is because he hands them to me. I think he has different hopes for how that will go, but I love that he loves romance novels. It's very sweet. Or he was maybe listening to a sports podcast, or also one of his favorite things. But a car in our neighborhood that we have mostly felt safe in sped by and threw a bottle at him and yelled something that he didn't hear because he had earbuds in. I don't think we have to guess what was thrown at him along with that bottle. And I am positive, had I been there, I would have done way more. I would have wanted to do way more than slug the driver on the shoulder. So what is the holy response to a situation like that? That can hold the anger and also promote peacemaking. I learned when I was a middle school counselor who dealt with bullying on a daily basis that a good response was to first direct toward the bully what you did was not okay. And then to the bullied, I'm here for you. In most cases, as a middle school counselor, I would know both children. And many times, the bully might have been in my office the day before crying about something else. So I had to hold compassion for both. Compassion in two directions, I think, is a firm boundary. Compassion is not approval. It's firmly saying what is happening is not okay, and then going towards the one who is being oppressed or bullied. When we have a chance to put ourselves in this middle space between violence and its victim, that's peacemaking. To truly change our hearts, I think we also have to see how we could be both of them, both the bully and the bullied. This is the hardest part, and this is what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about. We don't have to side with the bully. Just see how might that also be me. How we can get curious about a deep fear that might trigger some retributive response from our own selves. For me, it will always be around issues of justice and safety. I am truly indignant at even the potential mistreatment of the vulnerable. See earlier footnote about defending my unborn child. But seriously, that kind of anger around injustice done to the vulnerable, it has a place. I've been thinking a lot about the private and public expressions of anger. I think privately we have to have places where we feel safe expressing our anger, even swearing if we need to, with a therapist, with a spiritual director, with a best friend, with a spouse. I think we need to be able to say things that we need to work out, but might not be able to say publicly because they're not useful. I believe our public anger needs to look different. It needs to be pro-social. It needs to be fueled by desires for more holistic justice. But all too often, especially right now, public anger is retaliatory, fear-based, and dangerous, and we're experiencing that loud and clear in our current political environment. In an alchemical sense, anger is associated with the fire element. It is a raw energy to be transmuted into useful force for action, problem solving, and creativity. And as we know, fire has both a destructive and a regenerative quality. The same forest that is destroyed by a fire also gets new growth. Holy anger is that deep knowing that something ain't right. And I'll end this piece with an excerpt from Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, which he wrote in response to being asked about the rape of a young girl by a sea pirate. And then she threw herself overboard out of shame and humiliation. And the poem is called Call Me by My True Names. This is not the whole thing. But in it, he asks us to hold both. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. To become apprenticed to our anger, I think we have to see where our hearts are not yet capable of seeing and loving. We're all capable of being the bully. We're all capable of being bullied. And when we wake up to that capacity for both, I think the doors of our hearts start to open. And they quell the destruction of the fires, instead allowing them to become fires of compassion and whole-making.
I'm sorry you couldn't see the video, but you heard the thing. If you want to watch it, you go home and you put into YouTube The Grapefruit Ladies, Irish comedian or something like that, and you will get it. It's worth watching. I've watched it numerous times. Mm-hmm. It's got a great impact about how that made a difference. And it shows you something about the power that the behavior of one individual can have, or individuals in groups. This past Sunday, we ended the worship service across the way with a hymn that I had never heard. I didn't even know it was in our hymnal. And I suggested to Daryl Robinson. Daryl Robinson is the relatively new organist choir master for St. Paul's. After the choir came back from Lincoln, England, he replaced Chris Betts. Chris Betts, the English trip was the last time Betts was at the choir. Daryl Robinson has substituted for us in the past. He is unbelievably gifted in playing that instrument, and he plays it with soul. And I suggested to Daryl after last Sunday that we all go with the choir to Washington and support the choir as they sing for the dedication of the new ballroom that our orange-haired Savior is building for himself. Now, the hymn was written by a guy named Fred Kahn. Kahn was born in the Netherlands, and his teenage years coincided with Nazi occupation. His parents were very committed anti-Nazis, part of the Dutch resistance. And this had a very lasting effect on this guy, and he became a pacifist. So I want to read to you the words of that hymn. We utter our cry that peace may prevail, that earth will survive and faith must not fail. We pray with our life for the world and our care for people diminished by doubt and despair. We cry from the fright of our daily scene for strength to say no to all that is mean. Designs bearing chaos, extinction of life, preserving the future and wonder of birth. Creator of life, come, share out, we pray, your spirit on earth, revealing the way to leaders conferring round tables for peace, that they may from bias and guile be released. Come with us, Lord, love, in protest and march, and help us to fire with passion your church, to match all our statements and lofty resolve with being unresting in action involved. Whatever the ill or pressure we face, Lord, hearten and heal, give insight and grace to think and make peace with each heartbeat and breath. Choose Christ before Caesar and life before death. If only. No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargo, so watch your step, and we'll see you here next Sunday.